Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to gather together your people around your word. Pray that you would be with your servants who prepare to preach it to us. Pray that you would feed our souls and set Christ before us, that we might worship him in spirit and truth. Pray that you would bless our continued study of the Hebrew language, that we might know your word and be able to study it better, that we might know you more, that we might worship you more, that we might be able to better understand your revelation to us and live according. We pray all these things in your Son's name for his own glory. All right, so today we're going to do, actually let's just jump back to that chart y'all got. So that should help you in reading the Hebrew. We've already gone over writing the Hebrew, but that will give you some aid, like on the fly using that chart. Some letters do look very different, like Aleph, Sade, others. Some look almost exactly. It's not easy to, or not hard to duplicate those, like the Sin and the Sheen are pretty straightforward. Final form Qaf is pretty straightforward. Different ones, but that'll give you a quick reference. And if what's that, Ethan? Lamed, yeah. If you feel like writing the Hebrew out as it's printed and you want to take the extra time, you got special tip pens, be my guest. I'm not saying you have to follow my shorthand, but I will say this. When I was in seminary and I was translating dozens and dozens, if not a few hundred verses in seminary, we didn't have time to make sure our Aleph looked, all fancy and everything else. You're writing, dozens of words each day. You're going through that, so it's not expedient to be exact. And especially when your eyes are the only one looking at the paper, if you can look at it and read the words on there, that's what we're going for. This isn't. You're not writing something in Hebrew to send to the National Israel Inquirer to be printed in the newspaper over there. So it's okay if it doesn't look tit for tat exactly. Hope people aren't thinking, well, boy, this guy's he's a really second-rate Hebrew teacher. He's not even particular about the letters. Well, all I'm saying is, Pastor Carl, he taught me shorthand Hebrew. It's exactly what I'm teaching you guys to a T. Letters are exactly the same. I have his handwritten alphabet for me from the first day with his MS kind of stuttered hand strokes. It's a treasure. But got that for you there. So hope that's of benefit to you. Isti, I'll get you one. We've got one left. So today we're going to look at something that is similar to the noun sentence. In Moshe Greenberg, if you decide to get Moshe Greenberg, he treats the construct state in lesson 6 out of 30 that he does. Last time together we looked at the noun sentence, which in his book is actually chapter 3. So jumping ahead slightly, if you have the Miles Van Pelt Biblical Hebrew Compact Guide, I hope you have at least one of the two aforementioned works. Dr. Van Pelt does not mention the construct chain until page 57 in a 154-page book. So he doesn't mention it until quite a ways later, and he mentions several complex things before that. The reason I'm doing the construct state today is because following the noun sentence, logically, to me, it makes sense. It's closely related to the noun sentence. Before, we looked at the noun sentence with the subject following the predicate, or subject preceding the predicate, and then we looked at several two-word examples of that. Little short sentences. Jacob is a father. We looked at God is a father, Joseph is a brother, so on and so forth. Well, today we're going to look at the construct state. And construct state is generally pretty easy to recognize. Construct state is what the Hebrew grammar uses because there is no word for of in the Hebrew language. So, when we talk about construct state, there are several things you want to have coming into your mind. One being the word of. There is no, like I said, there is no word of in the Hebrew language construct state. I like to just put this after it to kind of help me out. Basically, if anybody here has done New Testament Greek, you know the genitive in the New Testament Greek is always translated of. Children of Abraham would be in the genitive case in the Greek. Well, the construct state is the parallel to that in Hebrew. Every time you see a construct state, you're going to translate it of, or we can use the possessive I forget what this grammatical device is called in English. I had a mind hiccup. It was a long weekend. Apostrophe, thank you. Apostrophe S. Apostrophe S, you can also translate it that way. For the longest time, when I married Rebecca, I had finished my first semester of Hebrew, had gone through the construct state, and we referred to almost everything in the construct state. You didn't talk about sunshine, there was the shining of the sun. And you didn't talk about sunglasses, there were the glasses of the sun. You didn't talk about wild rice, you talked about the rice of the wild. So we kind of had our own little language going there, and sometimes that may show up in conversation with y'all, and I'm sorry if it seems like we're weird. But we talked a lot in the construct state, and so everything was of. So in the Hebrew, we're going to look at a few examples of this. It shows possession using the word of or apostrophe S. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as the construct chain, construct state. What's going on here is that we have a governing noun, which is followed by the governed noun. The governing noun is in the construct state. The governed noun is in the absolute state. So, go ahead and put a few rules up here. Construct state. Governing noun. It always appears first in the word order. All right. Now, noun. I'll move for you just a second, Mom. Noun in the absolute state can't remember all the rest. Noun in the absolute state is the governed noun. Like my father-in-law before me, got words going all directions and everything. Is the noun in the absolute state is the governed noun appearing second. Usually a construct chain is only going to be 2 words, kind of like the noun sentence. You know, you're generally only going to have 2 words in a noun sentence. It's kind of sloppy. Okay, there you go. So, nouns in the construct state are going to appear first in the word order, reading from right to left. Nouns in the absolute state are going to generally appear second. Now, what's important to note is nouns in the construct state are going to undergo some vowel changes. Now, don't get scared by that. In the Hebrew, another reason I wanted to put this here is I wanted to introduce the concept's the right word. I wanted to introduce something that's going to be familiar to you if you read through the Hebrew, is that the Hebrew words, especially in the verbal system, are going to undergo quite a few vowel changes. And Hebrew is a language that you want to get used to, and don't get intimidated by what I'm about to say. You want to get used to basically reading the consonants, because the vowels are going to be undergoing some changes. They'll help you, yes. You'll be able to distinguish what's going on. Normally the changes are slight enough. You'll be able to pick it up. If you know your verb paradigms, you'll look at that and go, oh yeah, that's easy. It's got the aleph, segol, performative, with a lengthened vowel before the final ground form consonants. That's obviously a first person common singular cal imperfect. That's easy. So you'll be able to pick up on that stuff when we get to the verbal system. I think it's so regular, and the vowel changes that will have taken place will show themselves pretty clearly. You'll be able to see what's going on and pull those apart. So let's look at some Hebrew words. As we look at these examples, I'm going to give you some vocabulary words. So if you have a separate page for your vocabulary, you might want to be turning back to that as we look at some of these words. So everybody got those rules? Because I'm going to erase them. Otherwise, I'm going to have to start squatting for all these examples. Whoops, that's not my wet one. There we go. All right, so for the first example, all of these are 2 words, basically because the construct state appears most frequently just 2 words. Very, very simple, straightforward. So example number 1. Go over here to write it. We're going to have the word yod, which is the Hebrew word for hand, is going to be added to your vocabulary. Very, very simple word. We have our yud. What vowel is that underneath the yud? Comets. I heard comets out there. That's a comets. And then we have, what letter do we have following that? Dalet. Looks like a final form cough. Guess I should trim that a little bit. There we go. We have a dalet following the yud and the comets. That's the word for hand. That's a very important word in Hebrew. You hear about the right hand of the Lord. Sometimes it can be used for forearm, but most often it's translated hand. So, for the construct state, we're going to have the hand of the lad. We learned the word last week for lad. Anybody remember what that word was? Na'ar, yes, there it is. We're going to learn the definite article probably next week. The definite article followed by na'ar, hana'ar. This would be the lexical form for the word hand, yod. In the construct state, it's a very simple word. It undergoes a very simple change. The comets get shortened to a Potdog. Whoa, really big change there. It didn't even change the pronunciation. It's still Yod Hana'ar. Now, we would translate that in Hebrew. Hand of the lad or boy. If you don't like those semi-antiquated words. So there's a Hebrew sentence in the construct state. Now, this is a very, very simple vowel change. We lost our little stem there, but it just changed to the shorter A-class vowel. It wasn't the full A-class vowel, the comets. So that's a very simple, straightforward example of construct state. Let's get a little bit more complicated here. And by a little more complicated, I don't mean we're actually going to arrive at complicated. Just be a little bit. The construct state, in reading through the Hebrew Bible, the construct state letters, or the construct state forms, even if the forms, one form should be very familiar to you by the time we're done, but even if the forms are not jumping off the page, generally if you've got your vocabulary down and you're working through the text, it will really only make sense to translate the two nouns, the absolute and the governing, in the construct state. Hand the lad. Well, unless they're talking about hand the lad over to somebody, you know that Yod Hana'ar is going to be hand of the lad. So it will help you out there in the context. Okay, let's move on to another example. Example number 2. For those of you keeping track, we're going to look at another one. I think we've had this word before. Make sure I get my right lexical form here, so when I make the changes for construct state, that'll be correct and not misleading. Ah, very good. Yes. Okay, that is the Hebrew word for house. Well, let's take a stab at pronouncing this one. We have dogish in our bet. What kind of dogish is that? Line or forte? Line. There's no preceding vowel before this dogish. So it's a line. It's in Begad Kafat too. We have the bet. Only the Begad Kafat letters can be line. This one, in fact, is being the beginning of a word not preceded by a vowel. So we have so it's going to be a B sound, our bet with the dogish. We have Potdog, so it's going to be a ba sound. Ah, that's our A-class vowel, short A-class vowel. Ba. We have another yud. We have, what vowel is that? Yurik, yes. And then we have the tav. So altogether it's ba yeet. Ba yeet. Ba yeet. That is the Hebrew word for house or household. A very popular and common word in the Old Testament. Like Rachel and Leah, who built the house of Israel. You know, you talk about somebody's house, you're generally referring to their estate, but also to their lineage in the Old Testament. That comes through nicely in the English translations. So, house, that's the Hebrew word for house. Ba yeet. But let's say we wanted to have the house of a man. It belonged to somebody. It wasn't one of those cool abandoned ones that's so fun to explore. It belonged to somebody. And even the abandoned ones belong to somebody, I realize that. Somebody's got the deed somewhere. Okay. Here's another vocabulary word for you. I think we may have already had that one. If we have, somebody recognize it, just shout out what it is. We have Aleph, Hirik, Yud, and Sheen. Anybody want to take a stab at pronouncing that word? Close. It's Ish. Remember our Hirik and our Yud gives it a E sound, like the I is in machine. Machine. So it's Ish, Ish. It's another example of where we have three consonants, but only one syllable. So if we remember from our syllabification, most of the time, when you have three consonants, if you have a short vowel and a Yud, those are generally working together and are counted as one syllable. So Ish runs together. So in construct state, so we have house, we have man. That's the word for man. I don't know if I mentioned that already. It's man, husband. Sometimes it can refer to, I'm thinking of the commentary I had to write on the Tower of Babel. There's a use there of Ish to refer to each one. If you take your holiday lexicon and look up Ish, I think there's 11 different ways Ish is used in the Old Testament. Most commonly, I think it's man. I know it's man translated most of the time, but it's oftentimes husband and a few other things. But for our purposes today, house, we have man. Let's put it in construct state. Another change that sometimes will happen, this is our governing noun. It's first in the Hebrew word order. This is our absolute noun. So the governing noun is the one that's going to undergo vowel changes. Goodbye, Potdog. Goodbye, Hirik. Welcome, Sarai. Again, a very simple one. Does change the pronunciation to bait. That's our A as in gray sound. A or E. In Hebrew, it's an E-class vowel. Excuse me. Beit ish. House of a man. Or a man's house, if you will. House of a man kind of sounds a little bit clunky, so we're going to say a man's house. A man's house. In the English, that's what that would translate to. So you see, some of these vowel changes are simple, and as far as why they change to which vowels they do, has to do with the pulling of vowels on other from other words. Sometimes in a word, especially in the verbal system. I'm just going to scare y'all to death about the verbal system. In the verbal system, you're going to have vowels that are pulling and contrasting with one another, and certain vowels within the word will lengthen and shorten. So you see, the changes themselves are not major. We're not losing consonants here. So you look at that word, and your mind instantly goes to, oh yeah, house. Bet, yud, tav. At least it should. That's what I want your mind to go to. Think of house. Don't think of, it doesn't sound like bayit. It actually loses a syllable by this vowel change. It goes from two short vowels to one longer vowel. But looking at the word moving along, you see you have three consonants of house, and you see a different vowel. That should let you know something's going on. It's probably house. Bait itself is probably not going to be another word. It's not. It does mean house of in the construct state. So you can check your lexicon if you want to be absolutely safe. I'm one of those I want to be absolutely certain. I've got bayit in the construct state, and bait doesn't mean somebody's name or some special Old Testament geographical location. No proper nouns, none of that stuff. So you're looking at the three consonants. You should see house there. The vowels serve as confirmation of it's either appearing in its lexical form, dictionary form, as bayit, or whether it's undergone some changes. Maybe it's in construct state. So, a man's house. I hope y'all are still with me because we got 2 more to go. We're going to look at some that undergo quite a bit of change, actually. But the consonants are always staying intact, and that's what I want you to see in each of these examples. That's one thing I want you to see in each of these examples, is that the consonants are going to serve as your guide. So learn the words, yes, in the lexical form, but know well what your consonants are, what the consonants are that you're dealing with. So when you see words that look like a certain lexical form, but the vowels have changed, that'll let you know something's going on there. It's tipping you off. Okay, another word, and this is a fun one. Check my time. Okay. Okay, there we go. We have para. These guys, para, they go around wearing signs that say, "Eat more chicken." Para is the Hebrew word for cow. Now, I work at Chick-fil-A, but boy, I love me a grilled steak. Para, cow. Then we have a doggish line in this begadkafat letter. It's begadkafat, so it can be line, and it is line. No preceding vowel. It appears at the beginning of a word. Pei gives us a p sound when it has its doggish. If it doesn't have the doggish, what sound does it make? F as in frog. So we have a pa with our comets. We have a pair of comets here. Pa, resh, pa, ra. And it ends with that classic feminine Hebrew ending, comets hey. So many Hebrew words end comets hey. You look at the Hebrew names in your Bible, how many transliterated and come out AH, my own name being one. Micah, Obadiah, Jonah, Jeremiah, Hezekiah, Isaiah, Zechariah, Zephaniah. I mean, there are gobs of Hebrew names that end in comets hey. Very, very common. And a lot of Hebrew words in general just end in comets hey. So, para is the word for cow, and you know Jacob's name, Yaakov. We use our boy Jacob here. He stands in nicely when we need a proper noun. Whoop. Bet went on a diet there. Okay, so we have para, we have cow Jacob. Cow named Jacob? No, that's not what's going on here. We're going to make some vowel changes and show what it looks like in the construct state. Now, this is an important rule for the feminine Hebrew words when it comes to construct state. Now, you remember that words, I think I talked about this maybe 2 weeks ago. Comets hey is actually a feminine Hebrew ending. If not, we'll get a crash course in the feminine endings. Comets hey is a feminine singular ending in Hebrew. It changes to tav when in construct. When in the construct state. When in the construct state. So, let's look at what would happen if we changed para. Well, what goes on, our first syllable stays exactly the same. This one shortens to a potdog. This baby right here goes from a hey to a tav. So, Parat Yaakov. Cow of Jacob, Jacob's cow. So, that's what that would translate to in English. Jacob's cow. We know Jacob had tons of them. Lord blessed his labors with Laban, who changed his wages 10 times. Boy, if my employer changed my wages 10 times and they weren't going up, I'd be hitting the highway. So Jacob's cow, Parrot, Yaakov. My three's kind of merging there. Maybe a little bit better visual for you. So, you see the changes there? We changed a whole consonant. But you're reading through Parrot, Yaakov. Parrot. I'm not talking about a parrot. What does Parrot sound like? Cow. And you can check the lexical form if you want to confirm. You know, if you write the rule down, comets, hey, changes to tav when in the construct statement. When the word ends, comets, hey, feminine singular, it's going to change to the tav. So if you have your feminine singular page, you want to maybe put this rule with this. You may want to put it also in the construct state. But that's example number 3. We're doing all right. So everybody got para as your lexical form of cow. Parad in the construct state. Now the last is the most important. Save the best for last. And I believe, I didn't crunch any numbers on this, but I believe this is the most used form of the construct state, is the masculine plural. You'll remember our masculine plural ending. I'll write it up here for you as soon as my board. Ooh, that was my finger. As soon as we get the board dry. Okay, the masculine plural ending was our Hirik Yud, followed by what consonant? Final form mem. That suffix appears with great regularity in the Hebrew Old Testament. It is all over the place, up, down, top, bottom, side to side, front, back. It is everywhere. That's a big one to know. The masculine plural. It's going to appear all the time. Now, when masculine plurals in construct state is going to undergo some pretty good changes. But when I think of construct state, I more think of the masculine plural because it's the one that appears so often. Like I said, the masculine plural in the standard form ending there appears often. The construct state doesn't appear as often, but still appears regularly. So, I'm going to write out an example, and then I'll write out one more rule for you. We'll write out an illustration. Let's see here. This is number 4, example 4, and our final one. So, congratulations on making it this far. You remember our Hebrew word for brother? Maybe we didn't go over brother. If we didn't, consider this an addition to your vocabulary. This is one of the simplest and easiest Hebrew words to pronounce, so somebody do this one for me. Exactly. It's ach. That is the word for brother. It doesn't sound very nice. You're greeting your brother, ach. Kind of sounds like you're disgusted to see him to us. But remember that the Hebrew language is a very guttural language. It has 4 guttural letters. They had some different phonetic emphases that we don't. So that's the word for brother there, ach. Ethan's got some achs. I've got one. Rebecca and Caroline and Easty have one. Rebecca Farrell in the back's got a few. Ach. That's the singular form for brother. Now, let's say we wanted to talk about Joseph's brothers. You talk about somebody with a whole bunch of brothers. Old Yosef had a whole lot of brothers. Weren't too keen on him either. Okay. There's Joseph's name. Now, we learned that last week, I believe. Yosef, Joseph's name. let's say we want to talk about the brothers of Joseph. Well, okay, if we were going to write the plural form of brothers, the plural form of brothers would look like this. Achim, brothers. But that's not brothers in construct state. It's not Joseph's brothers. It's not brothers of Joseph. So I think you curveball there if y'all already started writing that one down. This is not construct state. The masculine plural ending has its own special ending in the construct state. And I'll show you what that is. It loses the final form mem altogether. And the heric is lengthened to a sere. And the Potdog underneath our aleph changes to hataf, Potdog. So Ache Yosef, Joseph's brothers. Joseph's brothers. Ache Yosef. Translate that for you. Joseph's brothers. Joseph's brothers there. So this, the Sere with the Yud, is probably, again, I didn't crunch the numbers on this. I just know from reading, translating various portions of the Hebrew Bible, this is probably the most common form of the construct state. And whenever somebody says construct state, or I'm reading it in one of my Hebrew grammars and I see construct state, Sere Yud is what comes to my mind right away, and of. And that's really what I want to leave you guys with. Of, think of the Sere Yud at the end, because that's going to appear quite often. Sere Yud. And that's what you want to associate in your mind. I'm not saying you forget the rest, they're not important. This one is the most important. The most important. Joseph's brothers. Construct state, I also wanted to mention that construct state is actually not the most common way of expressing possession in the Old Testament. You know, the genitive, it's showing possession, of possession, apostrophe S possession, as my father's known for saying possession is 9/10 of the law. Possession is important. This is not the most common way of showing possession in the Hebrew Bible, but it is there, the construct state. You do have governing nouns, absolute nouns. Pronominal suffixes are actually the most, again, didn't crunch any numbers on this, just know from usage, I think pronominal suffixes are the most used to show possession. But the construct state is there nonetheless and very important. And you see its similarity with the noun sentence. You have two nouns. One is undergoing some slight vowel changes. So, for our lesson today, construct state, that's what we want to leave you with. We have of, or apostrophe S, it's showing possession, and you have the Sere with the Yud. That come through clearly? Construct state. Get my wet one. And then we're going to have to tack it on the end of next week's lesson. There are special forms for the word ish and isha, the Hebrew word for a woman or wife. There are special forms of those that they have just for construct state. That when you see one of these, you'll know that it's a construct state forms. Certain conjugations of ish and isha that we'll look at next week, since we're out of time for today. I will leave you with the Hebrew word Isha, though. You can go ahead and put that in your vocabulary, and that way it won't be unfamiliar to you when we look at next week's. There's Ish, that's man or husband. Isha, got that feminine ending on there. Kamate, woman or wife. This woman that you gave to me, she gave me the fruit and I ate it. So, Isha. Now, we have another Aleph with the Hirik. Dagish Forte or Dagish Line in the Sheen? It's Forte. It's non-Bagad Kafat. It has to be Forte. So, Ish-Sha. Isha. So, there's those two words, and we'll look at some special forms for these two when we get to construct state next week. They have their own forms. But there are those. Go ahead and put those in your vocabulary. All right, any questions on construct state? If I can't answer, I'll just put it off till next week. I'll do a little homework myself. All right, well, we'll close in prayer then. All right. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the time we're able to be together. Pray that you would bless Pastor Little as he opens your word to us. Pray that you would anoint him with your Holy Spirit. Pray that you would write your word on our hearts that we may walk in its light all of our days. Pray that you bless our fellowship together. May we encourage, strengthen one another, build one another up in the most holy faith till we all arrive at mature manhood, conformity to the image of Christ, in whose name I pray. Amen.